Hey everyone, it's Ben from Hammer and Steel Reviews. Today we are looking at a pattern welded Viking sword made in Pakistan. Do a quick rundown of the actual blade. Has an overall length of 38.5 inches. To the end of the pommel, to the edge of the cross trees, is right around 7 inches. The width of the blade is about 2.5 inches. It has a ground pattern that runs almost the entirety of the blade. The cross trees and the pommel are both done with pattern welded steel. You can actually see the structure. You can actually see some delaminations within that structure. Now, this is not the configuration it came to me in. When it came to me, the entire blade was etched. It had a dark black and silver contrast. Also, the handle, when it came to me, was actually quite large and was kind of hard to control. So I'll go over some of the things that I've done and why. I took the black and silver etch off because I have bought Damascus swords in the past. Now, Damascus swords and pattern welded swords are two different things. We have pattern welded, and pattern welded is when you take two different types of steel, stack them on top of each other, and you crush them. You get them extremely hot, you add an oxygen barrier, and you compress them together and weld them together. And what does that do for the blade? Well, with advancements in steel that we have these days, it actually doesn't do anything. You can actually get a better mono steel alloy than you can with just a million folds. When you have a sword that claims to be 600 to 1,000 to 1,000,000 times folded, really what that was meant for is getting rid of impurities within the metals. So another reason that I took the black and the contrasting etching off was many times when you do get someone who says they have a Damascus blade, it actually is just an etch. And what they do is they'll put a pattern on the blade with ink, and then they'll dip it in the acid. The ink will keep the acid from actually getting to the steel, and so it just etches the look of Damascus. And so I wanted to make sure that this actually had a pattern weld. So I grounded it all down which was okay because this blade was actually quite heavy at 3 pounds and 9 ounces. Now you would say, oh, it's a Viking sword, it's supposed to be heavy. Well, that's not entirely true. They weren't light, but they weren't exactly a million pounds, and so the movies have lied to you.
Here, you'll need this. I cannot lift this. Grow stronger.
So I wanted to see if this blade's etch is truly by pattern weld. So I left it in muriatic acid for 3 hours, and lo and behold, the pattern came back. So it is pattern welded, which was surprising, very surprising. It did come with this sheath. Now know the difference between a sheath and a scabbard. A sheath is just a pliable, bendable 2 pieces of leather that kind of protect the blade. A scabbard is a wooden core, and it's very strong. So they sent this sheath. It is fairly nice when it comes to these kind of mass-made things. The 2 sheets that make up the bottom and the top are leather, but I would say this is just a holder while you make a new scabbard. If you're going to go to a reenactment, please, please, please do a little bit of research and find out how to do a scabbard. They're not incredibly difficult to do, especially for a Viking sword. Another thing that I did is the handle was huge. When I grabbed it, I could almost not connect my fingers together here. So I unwrapped the wire wrap and I took it to my grinder and I ground down a ring so I could index better, get a better grip, and I could actually lock my hands together in a more comfortable manner. It's not perfect by any means, but it is a little nicer to hold on to. Here's some things that I would change about this blade that I can't do on the surface. Pommel is about 1 inch or 3 to 4 centimeters too far away. The handle needs to be closer. If you look at people like Roland Wojcicka or Matt Easton, they'll show you the correct way to hold a Viking blade and how they're supposed to be held. And it doesn't work if your pommel is clear down here, because you end up holding it more like that, but then your cross trees are too far away. It needs to be a lot fit. So this pommel actually needs to be raised. It needs to be brought right about there. I would also add a distal taper, because this guy is heavy. Because if you had a distal taper that started in this area here, it would be a lot more controllable. At this present time, the point of balance is about 5.5 inches away from the cross trees. That makes it really top heavy and really hard to control. Also, the fuller, they've been grinded by hand, and you can most definitely tell that. They do kind of wave around a little bit. Not terrible, but Viking blades usually didn't have such a narrow fuller. Viking age swords, the fuller existed, but it was much wider. And so it would almost look like it's not there. Now during the testing, I was very concerned because when I got the box came from Pakistan bent. I could definitely tell where it got smashed in shipping. And so I got the blade, and the first thing I noticed, a significant bend. And I bent it back in position, and that made me super nervous. And I was like, this thing is not going to hold an edge worth beans. And so I got really nervous about doing the test. I didn't want it to, 1, fail and rebound on me, and 2, I was worried about construction. I really was worried about construction because the letter that came in the box said it had a Rockwell hardness between 50 and 60. That could make for an extremely brittle blade if it's not tempered and normalized correctly. It cut through the milk cartons. Everything was fine. And then we took leather. It's quite a thick leather, and it was filled with sand. And it was very difficult to cut. And it was having a hard time cutting. We put a new edge on it. The edge was fairly sharp, and so I thought it was going to do great. It didn't cut through the leather bags at all. It did stab through the leather bags just fine, but cutting, it had a really hard time. Eventually, it took a bend while we were hitting the leather bags of sand. And it wasn't a substantial bend. It was about 1 inch deformation from straight. It made me nervous to try it on other things. So we tried it on the Viking shield. And we just kept watch on it, and it cut well into the Viking shield. As the test went on, we started noticing that it was bending slightly, but the edge was holding up. And it was getting kind of interesting. I decided that I was going to just wail on the thing. And so I took it over to a dead hardwood tree, and I just went to town. I hit that thing probably 15 or 20 times as hard as I could. And the edge didn't roll or anything. It did keep taking little teeny minor little bends, but the edge never broke. The edge never chipped, never rolled. There was not even that white line that exists when you sharpen a blade and then it starts to dull. So that tells me that the edge is sharpened and hardened while the core is still pliable. I asked the maker of the blade what metals went into this, and he said high carbon steel and railroad steel. Now, I'm not quite sure what that means because there are so many different types of steel out there, and some steel that just doesn't take a hardening and a normalizing cycle very well. I jumped on sword forums and asked what they said, and they said, you know, historically speaking, that might not be far from the truth. So something that should have been a big negative, I don't know what to say. If you want to take it to a reenactment, you'll have a conversation piece for sure. If you're able to fix all those little things that I mentioned before, it's not a half terrible sword. Would I suggest you buy this thing? I'm not going to say yes or no because it has pros and cons. Something that was cool about this blade is when I contacted the maker, I kind of wanted to see his process. And so he was nice enough to send me picture updates fairly frequently. And it was fun to see the blade go from blank to hardened to furniture to finishes to the actual finished blade product that was sent to me. If you're interested in a product like this, follow the link below and that'll send you in the right direction. Thanks for joining us today, guys. If you like what you saw, please like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Every like and subscribe helps us immensely. Also, come and join us on Facebook, where we do many updates and giveaways and have a lot of fun. Again, thank you for joining me today, guys, and may all your days be filled with history.